this one on? Dance then wherever you may be. I am the Lord of the dance, said he, and I'll lead you on wherever you may be, and I'll lead you on in the dance, said he. Now, we're not going to, I don't think we're going to be dancing. If you want to dance during some of the stuff, you may, but using dance is just a metaphor for living life abundantly and joyfully. I think that's appropriate. And that's what we're going to do today. We're going to have a celebration of life. Now, Karolyn, well, let me first say, good afternoon, class. Welcome to Karolyn 101. Because most of you didn't have the opportunity. Some of you did. She was much more active at other churches, but in her later years, she had immune system difficulties and tried to stay out of crowds and all that sort of stuff, and a lot of organ problems. And I won't get into that right now, but that did affect her. Karolyn was, I started to say, pushed me to do a lot of things that I just had never done before. I was real conservative and reticent to do things in my early life especially. I shouldn't say pushed. She was persistently encouraging. One of the things that she encouraged me to do was she found online, there's a guy named Bobby McFerrin. Anybody know Bobby McFerrin? Most of you just know him from the little song, Don't Worry, Be Happy. Well, Bobby is a consummate musician. He's just a little older than I am, but he grew up in a musical family in New York. His father, I think, sang in the Metropolitan Opera. And they had musicians of all sorts in and out of their house. He's just a great guy. And he was doing a workshop on something that he calls circle songs. And it was all improvisation. And we never saw a note of music. And everything was all improvised, okay? And it was a way of getting people around you in a group and building up this song. That was just, you just got totally on the spot. He said, don't go into this thing thinking about a preconceived melody or a preconceived bass line or anything. You just teach it as it comes to you. Just let it flow. He was all about improvisation. Well, that's what this service is going to be, okay? We're all about improvisation. And like I said, Karolyn encouraged me to go there. I said, "Oh no, that's cost too much money. Got to fly to New York." This was in a retreat setting outside of New York City, and I was going to have to go to Grand Central Station and all this stuff. I said, "I can't do that." She said, "Yes, you can." And so, anyway, she persistently encouraged me, and I went, and I was so glad that I did. Bobby, if you want to know stories about Bobby, never used the word. He never used the word God, and he never talked about prayer, but he did some things in his workshops that were some of the most spiritual things that I've ever known. He lived it. He didn't just use words to talk about it. And when we talk about God, most of y'all have been to funerals before or memorial services. You know all the scriptures. We're not going to dwell on that today. You know what the scriptures are, and many of you have sent me scriptures in cards and letters and all, and that's wonderful. But we're going to, you know all that, okay? We don't need to teach you those scriptures. We're going to talk about some ways that God manifested himself in Karolyn's life and in our life together. So this is going to be about him. So I'm going to open it up after a while. I know that some of you are already planning to talk some. We're going to open it up and let you share. If you want to come up here, you can. I'll have a microphone and I'll go around. We did this just at a recent funeral that was here not too long ago, a couple of weeks ago, and just let people share their thoughts about whatever. So right now, I want us to sing something though, and. Okay, can't have a music director, minister of music, without leading a choir, so you're my choir, and we're going to sing the first and last verses of Amazing Grace. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found. Was blind, but now I see. When we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we've no less days to sing God's praise than when we first begun. We've no less days to sing God's praise than when we first begun. Thank you for that. Thank you. One thing that I like to do at services that I presided over, especially when I was a hospice chaplain, was to light a candle with a, whoops, where I put it. Try another one here. Oh, well, I don't know that I can. What happened to the? Can I do that from here? There we go. Now, let the light symbolize the light that was Karolyn. And you see the light here as it burns. And I'm going to put it back behind the pulpit here. You got to trust me, the light is still burning. You just can't see it. But it's still there. Let me tell you how we, well, I got some note cards, and they're not in any particular order, just some things that I've thought of the past several days and in the middle of the night. I put a couple of pots of, Karolyn said that they were called trilliums, that are little purple flowers. They were, this morning when I dug them up, they were all bright and perky and everything, and they sort of wilted before I got up here. But those little three-petaled trilliums grow just sort of wild on our property. We live out in the woods and have a long driveway, a long gravel driveway, and they just sort of show up, when I walk my dog through the woods and all. They're here, there, and yonder, and they're here, there, and yonder along the driveway too. Well, after Karolyn passed away, the first time that I took my dog out for a walk, we walked out, and I looked over to the side of the driveway that we were walking down, and there was a patch of trilliums, and not just a little patch, it was a big patch. I said, wow, I don't remember there being that many trilliums there before. Karolyn loved the trilliums. She always talked about them, how pretty they were. Just a simple little flower, but she just thought they were wonderful, and they just grew up wherever. And then I looked down my path, and there must have been 30 or 40 or 50 yards of trilliums. I said, God's winking at me. Tell me it's going to be okay. Just when I've gotten a lot of those recently. Got a lot of those. One thing that I do want to tell you, I know that the term love is going to come up a lot today. And love, as it is in the Bible, when it means God's love, is, the term agape. Agape love is, as I understand it, as I researched it one time, a long time ago, it's unconditional love. And it's one way. It does. Most of the times when we do something good for somebody, or we do something loving or whatever, we sort of expect for them to do something back for us. Agape love doesn't care about that. Agape love just loves, whether or not the person being loved reciprocates or not. It's a persistent caring and concern. It's not what we think of as mushy romantic love. It's a caring and concern for the person that is so deep that we can't even imagine how deep that agape love is. And it doesn't expect anything in return. And I saw this happen in Karolyn's life over and over and over. She was sort of a magnet for attracting people that had problems and people that were having troubles. And I saw this from back when we were dating, and just sort of, and this sort of stayed with her. I don't know, she didn't go seeking them, but they got drawn to her. And I saw her express this agape love so many times with so many people like that. And so that was one of the hallmarks of who she was. Let's see. Let me get some papers here. We met when we were both graduate students at the University of Kansas. She was working on her PhD in microbiology, biochemistry, and I was working on one in zoology, majoring in animal behavior, and also worked for the State Biological Survey. While we were there, we got involved. That was back in our Baptist days, and no offense to anybody that's Baptist. The Baptists were awfully good to us back then, but we've changed since then. And we had was heavily involved in the Baptist Student Union at Northeast, or NLU as it's known now. And then when I went to Kansas, same thing. I got involved with the Baptist Student Union up there. And we had a lady, Yvonne Kiefer, who was the director of the Baptist Student Union. It was much smaller. There weren't that many Southern Baptists in Kansas, okay? So we had a small group of about 20, maybe 25, mostly grad students. And Yvonne was very, very good for all of us. I'm going to read you, and she had two boys, Steve and Brian. And I've recently gotten reconnected with Steve, and Steve sent a letter. And he says, as you know, my mom was the Baptist Student Union director at Kansas University. He says, as kids, we got to know many of the Baptist Student Union students, and some basically became big brothers and sisters to my brother Brian and me. When I was a sophomore in high school, one student took it a bit further, and he moved in with us for a while. That was Tom Edmonds. To us, Tommy. I think I came down with mononucleosis, and they had a university hospital there, believe it or not. But I still was pretty weak, and so I moved in with the Kiefers. With both of us being outdoorsmen and interested in biology, Tommy and I developed much more of a brotherly relationship than I did with any of the other students. Even after he moved back out, he was at our place quite frequently and was always welcome. To this day, I still consider him to be my brother. Then he tells a story here. For some reason, I was talking with his mom. She was a really good counselor. And I must have been having some problems with my dating life or something. I don't really remember exactly what it was. And Yvonne just made the suggestion. She said, well, what about Karolyn? I said, Karolyn? She's too short. And her response was the same as yours. She just roared back laughing, and then she read me the riot act. She said, what does being short have to do with anything? And so I'm sitting there, taking this in and put the thought in my mind, well, okay, maybe so. So anyway, I finally did get up the gumption to ask her out. And that's another story. And Steve goes on to say in his letter, says, that short student was also very pretty, funny, feisty, smart, and fun-loving. Karolyn. I'm not sure exactly when they started dating, but soon Karolyn was at the house as much as Tommy. In a sense, I not only gained a brother, but a sister. I don't remember there being a topic that was off limits with her, sometimes to my embarrassment, as well as Brian's. And although her studies were in microbiology, not zoology like Tommy's, or wildlife like I went into, Steve finally became a wildlife officer in southeast Colorado. And anyway, he said, Karolyn, but anyway, despite there being differences in the studies, Karolyn and I still had biology as a common subject. Karolyn made herself at home, just like Tommy did. She showed us how to make true Italian spaghetti, which was great. And although I towered over to her, he's about the same height as I am, I looked up to her as a big sister. When the two of them decided to get married, they shocked Brian when he found out that Karolyn was going to keep her last name. Let's put a little aside here. We also shocked our parents. But that was something that was common for our colleagues and friends at University of Kansas at that time. Karolyn had already published some stuff and was establishing herself in the scientific community with her name. And like one of my theology professors later said, names are just labels. I kept telling people, well, what about Roy Rogers and Dale Evans? They got two different last names, So it wasn't even a big deal with us. But anyway, it did shock our parents. And said one story gives an idea of what kind of person she was. At the wedding, Tom had a lapse in judgment. He handed me the keys to his car, a Plymouth Fury. He told me where he had hidden the car and had me bring it up to the church. And after knowing me all those years, he hadn't thought that I might do something to the car. But let's just say that there were some modifications made under the hood. You saw I think it was on the screen in back there, you saw that big gold Plymouth Fury that I had. Well, after the wedding was over, I got in, nothing. And Karolyn, I didn't have the foggiest idea what to do. Karolyn said, I bet they pulled the coil wire off. So she runs around. Next thing I know, she's running around, got the hood up. She's leaning over the hood. I'm sitting in the car, thinking. And she gets it fixed. And I just, until Steve sent me this note, I didn't know who had sabotaged my car. Now I know. Let's see, yeah. She says it was Karolyn who got out of the car. She never missed a beat. She stood on the bumper and a front tire because she couldn't reach across the engine to reach what she needed to. And she fixed the car as quickly as it took me to mess things up. So that was Karolyn. When we reconnected with him several years ago, my wife Sue and Karolyn connected on Facebook, and I could tell that Sue had a new friend before she ever actually met her. Unfortunately, due to Karolyn's health, we didn't get to see her as much as we got to see Tom. But each time we did, it was like we were back in Lawrence, Kansas, and only a month or two had passed instead of many years. It was obvious to me that beautiful though short, funny, feisty, smart, and fun woman was still the person that I found to be the perfect sister to go with my brother so many years ago. For those of us who had the privilege of knowing her, we are richer for it, and she will be missed. Steve Kiefer. So we'll also revisit some of the wedding things in a minute. We designed our own ceremony. But let me pause right now and see if there's any of y'all that would like to share something, some stories about Karolyn. There are lots of them, especially that make me look bad, but that's okay. I can take it. Jim, this is Jim Hardaway, Karolyn's brother. You want to come up here, or you want to use the? You come here. Okay, great.
So, by the way, Steve wasn't the only one that modified your car.
Truth comes out.
Yes. So I'm gonna use some notes because this is probably the only way I can get through this. So thank you everyone for coming out today to celebrate Karolyn's life, and may the 4th be with you. Today is Star Wars Day, and Tom and I were talking about this. It's like, isn't it appropriate that her celebration of life is on May the 4th, Star Wars Day. She loves Star Wars, and our family does too. In fact, we have 2 French bulldogs named Obi and Leia. So, as Tom said, I'm Jim Hardaway. I am Karolyn's bratty little brother. I am the baby brother. And she was my big sister. And she was about 7 years older than I was. So, I was pretty young when she was in high school and went off to college and all that. But, in life, she was just, she was a wonderful sister. She was always there for me and my family, my kids, my wife, Lynn. She's a wonderful daughter to our parents, wonderful wife, a cousin. Cousins can't be here today, but she and our cousin Kitty were like big sisters, or sisters. Great sister-in-law to Lynn, and an aunt to our children, and as we've heard, a friend to many. She, as we all know and will hear, she had a huge heart and a love for life. So, with that said, since I'm the bratty little brother, I get to put my perspective on the obituary. And I'm going to tell you the stories behind the story. And by the way, Tom, it is a beautiful obituary. Very well done. So our parents listed in the obituary. And if you didn't know Karolyn, I know Tom knew this about Karolyn. She had a fairly challenging relationship with my father. His intentions were good and honorable, but he just didn't understand Karolyn. And the more you get to know her, you would see that. And didn't understand her zest for learning and life. And, you know, he just didn't understand that. And he was born of a different generation. You know, he was in World War II and all of that. So let's just leave it at that. You know, they made up later in life, but it was contentious throughout her life. Karolyn adored and loved our mother, Catherine, whose zest and quirkiness and persistence, by the way, I call it persistently persistent. She passed that on to, our mother passed that along to Karolyn and myself and my brother. And in fact, at my mom's funeral, Karolyn, my mom used to play the ukulele for fun. And Karolyn thought it would be fun to sing Poor Papa and play the ukulele at my mother's funeral. Now, she just didn't sing one or two verses. She sang the whole song. I didn't realize there were that many verses. Anyway, so we grew up in Hurst, Texas, which is a bedroom suburb of Dallas-Fort Worth. She graduated, as Tom said, from L.D. Bell High School in 1968. Which was 1 year prior to the Summer of Love in 1969. Let's just leave it there. She was active in the school and church choirs. She had a beautiful soprano voice. By the way, I can tell some of these folks were in your choir. I mean, I heard some incredible singing during Amazing Grace, so wow, it was beautiful. She went on to college at Howard Payne University in Brownsville, Texas. I don't know if you've ever been through Brownsville, Texas, but don't blink, you'll miss it. Brownwood. I said Brownsville. You're right, Brownwood. So Brownwood wasn't big enough for her dreams. You could tell that. She was a free spirit, as we are all learning and all know, as most of her generation was at that time. Okay. Tom mentioned the studies in Germany. Let's talk a little bit about that. The only studying that she did in Germany was on the back of a motorcycle, sing German. And she spoke fluent German, and she had a blast. And so I'm 16 at the time when she comes back from this trip, and I think that is the coolest thing I ever heard. My parents, not so much. They were like, really? You're supposed to go study. But anyway, she had a wonderful time. She taught at so after her PhD, she taught at a lot of distinguished schools, although I do still shake my head about her teaching at Grambling State. I didn't think that was going to turn out well for her or her students. But she got through that, and eventually she worked for Eastman Kodak and retired from there, about 10 years ago? So as Tom said, they met at University of Kansas. She met her love of her life there. And they were married almost 46 years. Wow. So let's talk about the wedding. We saw the pictures back there, right? Yes, the recessional was zippity-doo-dah. And all that implies. Okay, so it wasn't quite the traditional, conventional wedding that you think of, nor the attire. They wore togas.
Robes.
Plain and simple. Tom says robes.
robe.
I mean, Karolyn had garland, she had a toga on, a robe on.
Karolyn made the robe.
Yeah, she made, okay, we were wondering where those came from, so she made those, they're beautiful. So I was in college at the time, and Animal House was just coming out with John Belushi, and if you've ever seen the movie, you know, they had a lot of toga parties, and we had a lot of toga parties at Texas Tech where I went, and so I know what a toga looks like. Okay, and Tom, really? Bunk beds on your honeymoon? Really? Come on. All right.
It was a sailing ship, Windjammer Cruises, and I thought it sounded like a neat thing to me. I didn't know how small that the rooms were, you know, it was just a moderate-sized sailing ship, but we actually got to sail it one time. At night, they would let the passengers actually do the steering wheel and everything. And you had to learn that when you turn the steering wheel, don't turn it too far because there was a delay. You turned it, and then it was a little while, and then the ship turned. Okay, but also with the accommodations, yes, it was bunk beds, and the toiletry, the bathroom was so small that you could sit on the toilet, brush your teeth, and take a shower at the same time. That's how small it was.
Thank you for that visual. Tom and Karolyn traveled the world, and Karolyn got that bug from my mother as well. She loved to travel, and you went to New Zealand, you traveled all over the world, and I loved hearing about your adventures.
Tell me what your mother did.
Which time?
No, I mean her vocation.
Oh, my mother was a nurse at American Airlines in Dallas, and so she had the opportunity to really fly all over the world. Okay, so I know this isn't about my mother, but I'm going to tell this story because this will explain a few things about Karolyn, where she picks it up. So my mother and her friend were in London, and they were doing a whirlwind tour, and they wanted to go see the crown jewels. Well, they were running out of time. They didn't have time to go into the front door and go all the way through it. So anyway, my mother goes up to one of the beefeater guards and says, you know, we've got like 10 minutes. We really want to see them. Can we sneak in the back? Now, there are pictures of my mother in the pictures back there, but, you know, Karolyn was short, my mother was short, and she kind of looked like the queen. You know, that was the funny thing. And the guard let them through. So they went in the back door to go see the crown jewels. So that was my mom, but that was also Karolyn, because Karolyn would have done the same thing. You know, Karolyn had such a huge impact on our family, me and my family, my kids, Lynn. About 17 years ago, I had open heart surgery. And Karolyn came down for a couple of weeks to help me out, and boss me around, basically. And, you know, as a bratty little brother, I pushed back. But, you know, she was there, and she was always there at holidays and just spending time with us. And we loved her dearly. We all love her. We will miss her. Rest in peace. Well deserved. I love you. Peace. Thank you.
Well, that took care of a lot of the cards that I had notes on. Thank you, Jim. Let me read another thing. One of my cousins on my mother's side she and her husband were missionaries to Zimbabwe for several years, and then they were moved to be missionaries to the missionaries that were in the various Istan countries. Although they couldn't call themselves missionaries over there, they had to have different jobs and things. But that's essentially what they were. They were undercover missionaries. Her name was Barbara Schleif, and She says that, she wrote me, said, one of the things I remember about Karolyn was her infectious laugh. Her care of your mom in her last days was so sweet and thoughtful. The year we spent Christmas at Mark's, she carefully picked out, that's one of her kids, she carefully picked out gifts that the kids loved. She was so gifted both in music and in science. She amazed me, but never made me feel less than when talking about her work. I am thankful for her life and the difference she made in others' lives. She will be missed. Barbara Schleif, Arkadelphia, Arkansas. Anybody else want to share something? Had several people that were unable to be here. Anyone else want to say anything at all? I'll bring the mic. You don't have to come up here. I'll bring the mic to you if you like. Okay, Larry, you want to come up here? This is Larry Odell. He is also a minister, and I'm sure he's going to tell how we first met. We worked together and all that sort of stuff. Sir Larry, be kind, okay?
I will. It's been 9 years since I stood behind a pulpit. God has a strange sense of humor. I grew up in Mendon. Tom grew up in Mendon, class of '69. We were in the band. The downside of Tom was he was Baptist, and I was Methodist. In 1998, the bishop appointed me to come to Christ Methodist Church in Shreveport. Prior to that, I had an email or a letter or something from Tom telling me that he had, was working at this Methodist church. And, I got excited because we made a pact. I would not talk about him or tell any of his stories if he would not tell any of mine. We worked together for 6 years, the most talented man. I didn't really know Karolyn very well. Our paths didn't cross too much before I moved to Shreveport. Steve had used the word feisty. And that's one of the things I remember about Karolyn. I wouldn't say feisty, I would simply say she was down to earth, tell it like it is, very compassionate, but you knew where you stood when you spent time with Karolyn. And for that I'm grateful. And also I'm grateful that God healed Karolyn from her illness. And she is with what we call the church triumphant, cheering us on as we continue on in our race. My brother Tom, you are so talented. You're the most talented musician I've ever known. He did things that I didn't know he could do, but he challenged our church, our choir, and then when he came over to this side of the river, he continued that. And so, Tom, our prayers are with you and also with Karolyn's brothers as well. God bless you.
And for those of you who are associated with this particular church, the Karen Eskew UMW circle, that's Larry's sister. So he has ties to this church too. Yeah, thank you, Larry. Jim, Karolyn had a sneaky side to her. When we were dating, she made me drive her all over Lawrence, Kansas, looking for a nice wooden cigar box that someone would give her. That went to tobacco stores and everything, and they had lots of I guess paper board things, but she finally found one that was that was a nice little wooden box, Well, they wouldn't just give it to her. They wanted to sell it to her for $1. I said, okay. And what she wanted for was she wanted to make a sewing kit for you. Okay, so I gave them the $1, got the thing, forgot about it. She said, I'm gonna make a sewing kit for my brother Jim. Well, now the prelude to this was that I didn't know how to sew. And when I would lose a button or something, I got in the habit of taking it to her to sew the button back on and that sort of thing. Well, some occasion, I don't know if it's my birthday or what, but anyway, I get this present, and it's that cigar box. She lied. She wasn't doing it for you. She made me drive her all over Lawrence, and she had quilted on the inside and had all the needles and the thread and everything like that. And it came with a free sewing lesson. And that was the last time she ever sewed on a button for me. Just thought you'd like to know that. She tried a lot of other things. If I recall correctly, is this knitted? Is that what that is? Or crocheted? Okay, crocheted. She went through this thing of crocheting, and she made me this cap. And I think when I first got it, it was like this, and so I put it on. I thought, I didn't know you were supposed to turn it up. And anyway, she gave, and it came with a scarf that was about this long. I wasn't quite as tall as what she thought I was, I guess. But she tried that, and then I remember she was just interested in all sorts of things. When we had moved to Knoxville, Tennessee, I came in one day and went in the bathroom, and there were all of these reeds and things draped over the shower curtain, and there were also reeds in the bathtub and all. She'd taken a course in basket making, and she was softening up the reeds or whatever you call them to so that she could weave it into. And she made several baskets, and so and it just dawned on me while I was looking at all these things taking over our bathroom that, well, I always thought the thing about underwater basket weaving was a joke, but it's true. That's what it is. It's underwater basket weaving. And then another time, she got one of the guys in the church to bring over a tiller. We were in a church-owned home in Knoxville, Tennessee, and she wanted to have a garden. Well, this guy he plowed up some ground for her, and then they got to talking about all she wanted to do, and then he made it a little bit bigger, and then she wanted to do something else she wanted. Well, said, well, that needs to be separate. So then he made another plot over here. So I go back, and our backyard has this huge area that's been tilled up, for a garden. I said, do you know what you're looking at? Do you have any idea how much work that's going to be? I said, it'll be fine. Well, we found out that at that time that gardening really wasn't her thing. It was way more work than what she planned for. While we were dating also, I did a lot of music with the college students and all. And I remember one time we were doing something, and I had a tambourine, and usually I would give the tambourine to somebody else to play. Sometimes I played it, but anyways, so we were having this Baptist Student Union get together, and we were jamming on some folk song or something, and I threw the tambourine to Karolyn, and I said, "Here, you play the tambourine." Not a good idea. Found out that she had a beautiful voice, she could sing, no sense of rhythm. And so that was the last time that I ever handed the tambourine to her and expected her to play it. But she was willing to try. She was willing to try almost anything. And we used to go fishing some. There were some pictures there. I think you saw of her holding a bass with our little dog Zippity. And there was a pond when we lived in Arcadia. There was a little pond that we went to. And Zippity and I would go down and fish at the pond. And Zippity's job was to, when I'd catch a fish, put it in the floor of the boat, and Zippity would go over and bite the head, crunch, and when the fish stopped flopping, well, that was his job was done. He just didn't like to be flopping around, so he'd bite the head, the fish would stop flopping, then he'd get up and be ready for the next one. So anyway, so it's just this little John boat, and Karolyn and I and Zippity are in the boat. And it was getting sort of late, and so I said, well, Karolyn, it's about time to go in. Well, she had already cast her bait out, and so I was turning the boat around, and she was in the back of the boat, and so I was paddling, and we started going the other direction. Well, she had the rod and reel like this, okay, and so she'd already cast it over there, and so we're turning around this way, so she just turns over like this, and she's got the reel like this, and at that moment, a bass hit her lure. I said, Karolyn, you got one. Set the hook. And she set the hook, and somehow managed to get the bass in. That's what you see in the picture is the bass that she caught. It's a pretty nice little bass. And pardon me if this word offends you, but that just gives a whole new meaning to the term bass-ackards. When anybody else want to make any comments there and either lighten up or serious up the conversation? Anyone else have anything to share? Okay. We had there were just these past few days looking through the pictures and all. I looked through the pictures a little bit or jot down notes, things that just came to mind. I'm sure this is going to happen for a long time now. Just things that, that God's winking at me again, and saying things are going to be okay. But these cards aren't in any particular order. Sometimes Karolyn goofed. One time when we were in New Orleans, when she was researching at Tulane University in the Delta Primate Center, I had this severe pain in my gut area. A few years later, we found out that was gallbladder problems, but we didn't know then. And I was just dying. We lived in a little apartment in Mandeville. And so she called and talked to the people at the hospital and everything. So they were waiting on us. And so she put me in the car and was driving down. And I was just moaning. I was so sick. So we get to this hospital, and I'm getting out, and I'm just in pain. I said, She took us to the wrong hospital. Get back in the car, go to the right hospital, that sort of thing. Let's see. There's another story of a goof up. I remember that when she first started started researching at the University of Tennessee School of Veterinary Medicine. It was snowing. They had to come pick her up in Knoxville. It was real hilly. Somebody had to come pick her up in a 4-wheel drive, and she had on this. I think it was believe it or not, I think it was one of my old overalls or something. But anyway, that she managed to make fit her. And when she came back, she was just all wet and covered with snow and everything. She just did not have a good first day. Turns out that they were working with a shipping container disease, I think, with cattle. And they just assumed that since she was from Texas, she knew all about cattle. Again, nope, that wasn't true. But she stuck it out, and she learned a lot about working. How do you pick up the tail of a calf and can move them that way and all that sort of. She learned a lot of stuff that way too. let's see. We had our differences. She liked raw oysters and rare steak, and was known on several occasions to send the steak back because it was too cooked. Still looked rare to me. I like my food cooked, by the way, both oysters and steak, but she liked hers rare. We had also differences in abilities. She was better at finances and anything that had to do with math than I was. I tried doing our taxes the first year that we were married, and she took one look at what I had done and said, "Nope." She redid it. But she was a terrible speller. She couldn't spell worth a hoot. And when we were dating, I gave her a spelling dictionary for one of her birthdays. That's back before the internet and everything, okay? And I wound up typing and spell checking and editing as we went when she was writing out her dissertation. I did all the editing there. So anyway, if it had to do with math, that was her job, and the other was mine. She did most of the cooking. Except for omelets. She liked the way that I made omelets, so I did the omelets and she did the rest of it. We learned to divide tasks. Oh, and that brings me to the wedding. You saw the different pictures of the wedding. We just threw the rule book out. We said, look, we're going to design our own wedding. There are no rules unless a particular church imposes those rules on you, and so we decided that we wanted it to show the equality that we proposed to have in our marriage. And so we were thinking about what to wear, and we went through a lot of different ideas and finally came up with the idea of robes or togas, as Jim says. And so she made those, and then the church where we got married was her home church in Hurst, Texas, Bellevue Baptist, and it had 3 sets of pews, and so there were 2 aisles, and so rather than her father giving her away, I didn't like that symbolism either. We started at the back, and we walked down together, and then met at the front, and then had the service, and we included. I wrote some of the music for it. Before I get further than that, let me play something for you. Took her to, we were just dating, and I took her to her church where there was a grand piano, and I said, I have something I want to play for you, and I played that for you, and I said, do you know what that is? And she said, I know what it could be, and I said, okay. I said, there's a question that goes with that. And she sort of was a little hesitant, and I said, I want us to say the question together. And so she was starting to catch on, and together we said, will you marry me? And we both said, yes. And that was the processional. And Jim played timpani on that, on that processional. We had a little orchestra that concocted that. But anyway, so that was. I also wrote that for. I was still in seminary. I had left Kansas and gone to seminary to get another master's degree in church music. Did I tell you all the story about that? About the master's? Okay, well, Karolyn skipped, in her program, she got to skip the master's. She just went straight to her doctorate. And then I got a master's in zoology from the University of Kansas, and then another master's in church music from the Southern Baptist Seminary in Louisville, Kentucky. It had the best music program that I knew of in religious work. And so I had the two masters, and she got the doctorate, and I said to her, tell you what, I'll call you doctor if you call me master. And that was the last that was ever spoken of that. Here's another song that we also had a congregational song. We did, and I'd forgotten this. We did the hymn of joy, joyful, joyful, we adore thee. We had the whole congregation sang this at our wedding, and I'd forgotten this. And my choir members will know this, that I'm a bad one to change words and stuff. And so I changed the second verse. I'd forgotten this to joy of sharing love together, love that deepens as it grows, love sufficient for each other, yet so full it overflows. Joy of loving thee together, and through thee our love extend. Teach us love as love incarnate. Sing we this, our prayer. Amen. I'd forgotten that I wrote that. I also wrote this that we signed, that we had done as a duet at our wedding. It's called the Journey Song. Come with me on a journey to a land we've never known. Come with me on a journey, and as I take you for my own, you know I am yours. Oh Lord, we pray that you guide us on a journey. Lead us with wisdom, light, and truth. Through valleys filled with the least of these brethren, we'll meet you, Lord, and learn of loving you. Come with me on a journey to a land we've never known. Come with me on a journey, and we'll learn of life more than our own. We'll experience love. And there will be love. song in a long time. And Jim already alluded to the point. When we were getting ready for the wedding and all, we were driving around Dallas. Now, Karolyn grew up in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, okay? So I found out pretty soon that her definition of it was just right over there was not the same as someone who grew up in Minden. And we'd be driving around Dallas. He said, well, let's go. Need to go to this place for whatever, you know, and we'd be driving around. And say, it's just right over there. 20 minutes later, you know, we'd still be driving. And I said, I thought you said it was just right. Well, it is. It's just right over there, you know. And she did that. We were in New Zealand, and there was this, we're in this big state national park, and there was a glacier way across this floodplain area, and you could walk to it. And she said, "Let's go to the glacier." And I'm being a stick in the mud, and I say, "That's too far away." No, it's just right over there. And an hour later, we're still walking, you know. And we finally got there, and it was good. Then we got all the way back, and we found there were these birds, kias, and before we got to the glacier area, we had stalked a kia, and we're so proud of ourselves. The bird was in a bush, and we got up just right close to it. Okay, and then here's this wild bird, and we're just so proud of ourselves. Well, when we got back, there were kias all over our car, our rental car, eating the rubber molding along the side of the windows. Yeah, they were not as wild as we thought. So anyway, driving around Dallas, we got most of the service planned out, you know, with what we wanted and everything. And so talk about the recessional. What do we want for a recessional? And just the words, my oh, what a wonderful day. Zippity-doo-dah, zippity-yay. My oh, what a wonderful day. That came to mind, and I said, I think I can make that work. And so I made it wasn't just zippity-doo-dah. I made a medley with it, with Joyful, Joyful, which we had just sung before. So there's a picture that you see of us in the robes, and we're sort of skipping. That's what we're doing. We're skipping along to zippity-doo-dah as we go out. And a lot of our conservative friends and relatives and all that were at the wedding just didn't know what to make of any of it, because it was so different from any wedding that they'd ever been to before. But that's okay. That's okay. We did it. We did what was meaningful to us. We used the symbolism that was meaningful to us. Jesus got in a lot of trouble for that sort of thing too. And then when we got our first dog, our little Westie, we named it Zippity Doo Dog. That was official. Well, actually, the one Zippity Doo Dog, Karolyn said, since it's a West Highland White Terrier, we got to have something Scottish in there. So for the AKC registration, she said Zippity Mech-Doo Dog. And I remember one time we had three little kittens that showed up at our place, and Karolyn was trying to give them away, and some of the people wanted one or the other, but they just wanted one, and she'd had them together so long, Karolyn couldn't stand to see them separated, and so we wound up just keeping them. One of them unfortunately died, but the two other sisters are still, they play together, and Karolyn did a good job of keeping them together. And one time I came home and we had a new dog, and Karolyn, I don't forget where she was, but anyway, I guess in a vet's office or something. Anyway, this this guy was going to have this dog's, I think it was like a Catahoula cur or a blue heeler or something like that. I'm not exactly sure what breed it was. But he was going to have its tail cut off. And Karolyn just couldn't stand the thought of that. And so she bought the dog from the guy and brought it, and the dog kept its tail. But she was, we both had a love of animals like that. I remember all animals except for one particular type of insect. And I did my research at KU on carpenter ants. And I kept my ant colony in a particular room where other students had theirs. And most of them were working on something other than what I was. And so I was going to show Karolyn the lab, where I raised my ants and everything. And she gets to the door of the small door, and she just freezes. I said, "What's the matter?" You didn't tell me there were roaches, and there were these big, huge oriental cockroaches that other people were using for different behavioral experiments and everything, and they were just all over the place. And some of them had gotten out, of their cages. And anyway, she drew the line at roaches. She did not like roaches. But most everything else she was okay with. I went home one time. She says I caught a snake. I said, "Oh, okay." And snakes were fine with me. And she put one of our favorite techniques if we wanted to not kill a bug or something was just to put a glass over it, and then slip a piece of paper under it and take it outside. Well, this little snake, it was a hognose snake. And hognose snakes have a whole neat story about them. They play possum, okay? They play dead is one of their defenses. But anyway, she had this one wasn't old enough to learn to know how to do that. And it's this little bitty hognose snake, and with a glass over it. And I said, "Oh, that's a hognose snake." And so anyway, she caught the hognose snake for me. Let's see. Women, when y'all change your hairdo or the color of your hair, and without telling your significant other about it, you just don't know what that does to us. You saw Karolyn with different hairdos. One time when we were dating, I went to pick her up at her lab one day, and she came out, and she had this huge afro. And nothing against afros, I just never seen Karolyn in a huge afro. At that time, she had long, straight hair. This is a big change, okay? And so I'm thinking to myself, just don't say anything. Just act normal. Just act normal, it'll be okay. And so she let that go on for a while, and then finally showed me that it was a wig. And then another time, when I went to seminary, when I left, she was still at Kansas, and I went to Louisville, Kentucky. And she sent me a picture of herself, and some of those pictures are back there. And she'd cut her hair, instead of being long and straight, she'd cut it short and with some wispy curls and stuff like that. And I looked at that and said, "Oh dear." And so I put the picture up on my desk, and looked at it every day. And finally, I got used to it. Okay, I can live with this. That's okay. I can do this. And then the next time I saw her, it was back something else. She changed it again. So anyway, that just really messed with my mind. Let's see here. Oh, we also argued a lot not about too many things, but she was a bacteriologist, microbiologist, and I was an animal behaviorist, and I told her that bacteria behaved, and she says, "No, they don't. They just respond to chemical stimuli, blah, 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 blah." So we never did agree on that. Never did agree on that. Karolyn was always generous. She gave money to those in need. Oh, here's one. I learned this when we were on our honeymoon too. We were walking along the beach in the islands in the Caribbean, and we see this sea fan that had washed up. And oh my goodness, it's getting late. We saw a sea fan, and she said, "Let's. That's a really good looking sea fan. Let's take it back and mount it." I said, "No, we'll find others." She said, "No, let's get this one." Well, we were just starting on our walk, and I didn't want to be carrying that sea fan around. Well, we got it, and sure enough, we never saw another one. And we took it home and mounted it and made a nice little display out of it. And she taught me to this, this phrase "carpe diem," seize the day. Well, that can also be translated "seize the moment." And says, when you see something, don't just assume that you're going to find more of them or that it's going to be repeated. Seize the day. Do it then. You're walking in a state park or a national park, and there's this nice, cool spring flowing by. Take your shoes off. Put your feet in the water. Splash a little bit. Live it. No, Carolyn, I don't want to do that. Take your shoes off. Yes, ma'am. And she was a persistent encourager for me to do that sort of thing. This is a funny story. She had a way with words. She's a problem solver. She went with us on a senior adult trip to Glorieta, New Mexico, to a big Baptist encampment. And we were coming back, and it was about it was like about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and we hadn't eaten yet. It was out in West Texas, and there just wasn't anything out there. And I think we were pulling into Lubbock. I'm not sure, Jim. Jim went to school in Lubbock. And pulled into a Piccadilly or some cafeteria chain like that. And I got out and walked up to the door, and it had the hours posted, and we had just missed it, like just a few minutes, and the door was locked. And so I was starting to go back, to tell everybody we'd have to find someplace else. And out of the corner of my eye, I see Karolyn. They still had customers inside, but the entrance door was locked. And so she whooshes past me, and I'm thinking, uh-oh. The next thing I saw, she's talking with this guy who I assume was the manager. The next thing I know, he's coming to the front door, opening it up, and says, "Y'all come on in." Okay. I finally said, "Karolyn, what did you say to him?" He said, "Oh, nothing. I just told him that we had a van full of hungry senior adults, and could he recommend some good place for us to eat?" Genius, pure genius, pure genius. Let me read you another letter. When I was at Kings Highway Christian Church, Disciples of Christ, that's where I have my ministerial credentials and where I still keep them with the Disciples of Christ. And Bill McDonald was the senior pastor there. He was the senior minister there when I was there, and just a great guy. Just helped me grow so much in making ministry be a real human thing, not just somebody that's up on a pedestal or something like that, which I despise that idea. He said, "Tom, I've been thinking a lot about Karolyn since your phone call. I was always very impressed with her PhD from Kansas. She had a great mind and a job that required her to use it. But in addition to intelligence, her mind called her to contemplate everything and everybody around her. So she was aware of what was going on around her and the lives of others. The gurus today would call it mindfulness. Justin, my artist son, said that Karolyn was thoughtful and encouraging. And Justin would post some of his drawings every year in something called Inktober. I don't know what Inktober must be a big deal for graphic artists and all. And anyway, it said that Karolyn would write comments to every drawing that he posted during the year. And then Bill says, likewise, she always wanted to see pictures of my garden. And together we admired the gardens at the bed and breakfast in Shreveport last spring when he was down visiting. After that visit, she sent me a link to the Longeview House and Gardens in New Orleans, a masterpiece of architectural and botanical beauty. She didn't have to do that, but she did because that's who she was, a thoughtful person who took time to know people. Whether it was a lunchtime conversation or a share the blues confession, she always listened with an open heart to what people were saying. My mind will forever picture her with that sly smile accompanied by twinkling eyes. It was a sweet, angelic smile, but it held a devilishly funny wit behind it. I think perhaps that was part of the magic that sustained the two of you as partners all these years. You could see the humor even in dark situations and let humor lead you to light-hearted moments. I already told you the story about us not calling each other master or doctor. And he says, we both laughed for a long time about that story. He says, I've always chuckled to remember that your recessional at your wedding was Zippity Doo Dah, and you named your first dog Zippity Doo Dog. I loved it when you told me that the reason your marriage had to work was because no one else could have stood to be married to either one of you. Though life is not all chuckles and mirth, the smiles are what I will always cherish about Karolyn and you. Karolyn was courageous and therefore an inspiration to all of us aging Homo sapiens. I know that the recent years have been hard for her to bear, and yet she pressed on and kept moving forward. She came to lunch at Strawn's last April in spite of breathing and walking difficulties, and then she insisted on coming afterwards to sit in the heat and the shade of the gardens at the Fairfield Place bed and breakfast. She squeezed every bit of life out of her years and did so with her smile intact. I believe that Karolyn had a deeper understanding of God's incredibly complex creation than most of us do. She admired it, savored it, and joyfully lived out her part in it. I thank God for bringing you both into our lives at Kings Highway Christian Church as part of the shrimp buster platters and beer crew at Herbie K's, and as good friends. I saw a sign once at an artist studio which read "Una vita non basta," which loosely translates from the Italian as "one life is not enough." It may not be for any of us, but it certainly wasn't for Karolyn. So I pray for continued life and enchantment for Karolyn, and for vivid memories and a peaceful heart for you, my much-loved friend. Love, Bill McDonald. I've got just, I think, a couple of more things that I want to play and help and let you sing along with me. Does anybody have any questions about any of the pictures or what we've just said, or just things that you're curious about? Yes?
What was the wedding song? I didn't know it. The proposal song.
I wrote it.
You wrote it?
Yeah, and I forgot to tell you this. I needed my last semester, I took a course in composition, and we had to write something we had to write a piece for the professor that was sort of like our final grade or something. And so Karolyn and I really hadn't even talked about getting married. We'd just been going together a long time. And so I thought, I don't really like when I was little, Larry and Tommy Walker back there from Minden remember this, people sang, "Here comes the bride, big, fat, and wide, stepped on a turtle, and down came her girdle." And I just said, I'm not going to have that at my wedding, because those are the words that I'm going to hear, okay? And so I said, I'll just write my own processional. And so that processional, that bum, da 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 dum bum, I wrote that and for a composition project. And then I took it to Karolyn and proposed to her with it. Okay? Any other questions? That was a good one. Okay. Before we do our last little thing here, I have been admonished by several people to remind you that there are refreshments across the hall, and you're welcome to stay and eat and drink and fellowship and all, however long that you want. But I think I've just about covered. Everybody's just about covered all the stuff that I wanted to do. Oh, well, maybe one other story. On our this is on our honeymoon. We stayed after the Windjammer cruise. We stayed over like a week in a little bitty motel in a little town where the sidewalks rolled up at 5 o'clock. And I had made them say, I'd been so good, don't drink the water. Okay, didn't drink the water. I forgot about ice cubes. And I drank some tea or something that had ice cubes in it from the local water supply, and I got Montezuma's revenge, and I was sick as a dog. The sidewalks had already rolled up, and I was sick. And Karolyn said, we've got to get some electrolytes into you. And I said, no place open. Said, there's a casino on the other side of the island. And these were small islands. It didn't take, and we had a rental car. So I said, let's drive over to the casino. I said, oh, okay, whatever, And so we drove over to the casino. And I remember I had to pay like little bitty glasses of orange juice. I had to pay $1 for each one of those little bitty glasses, way back then. And I wasn't too happy about that, but I drank about 5 of them and started feeling better. And she said, well, we're here at this. Have you been in a casino? No, never have been in a casino. Well, come here, we got to go through the casino. So we go through, so first there's all these slot machines. And so you want to play the slots? No, I don't gamble. So, well, you just try, just. No, I don't want to do that. And she just kept on persistently encouraging. And I said, okay, give me a quarter. So she said, so she gave me the quarter. Put the quarter in a slot machine, pulled the thing, got $1.25 back. Took the money, put it in my pocket. I said, okay. She said, well, wait, you're not going to play anymore? No, I won. That was a really good return on my money. I'm going to quit while I'm ahead. So, anyway, the song "Precious Lord, Take My Hand"? It's going to be on the screen. You can sing the words. Either lead me on or lead me home. Either one, whichever one that you feel like doing there. Precious Lord, take my hand, lead me on you. You may be seated. One other thought, and I've told several of you this, and still I can't believe that this actually happened. But Sunday night, the 7th of April, when she passed away, when she was healed, as Larry so graciously reminded us. You know, I've never heard Larry talk about his sister Karen or his sister Sharon, either one, and say that they died. No, it's on the day that they were healed. And I like that. I also like the fact that I use the word transition, that Karolyn just simply transitioned from life with a body to spirit-filled life. And anyway, we liked the group Celtic Woman. We were watching. She had made we'd watched a little bit of it when they broadcast it on PBS, but we missed the first part of it. So she made a donation to LPB and got as a thank you gift, got the DVD of the Celtic Woman 20th anniversary program. And they have a song and we were talking about just how wonderful that their harmonies were just great and the orchestrations were just beautiful. And, you know, we just really enjoyed that, watching that. And that's the last memory that I have of her. Something happened, and I don't know what happened, but she died that night. And my mind is just all befuddled. I don't have any recollection of it. I remember being confused and thinking that she must have called, that I must have gone out to get some groceries, and she called 911 and had the ambulance and all come out. I just didn't know what had happened. And exhausted, I fell asleep and got up the next morning and still didn't understand what had happened and called 911. And they said, well, we're going to send a sheriff's deputy out. And the sheriff's deputy came, and I sort of figured it out by then. Said, your wife passed away last night. I have no recollection of that, none. And some of my friends told me that I had traumatic amnesia, or another term for it is dissociative amnesia. But that's okay. I know, I talked with people. There were EMTs. They tried to shock her heart, that sort of thing. There was the justice of the peace, a judge out there in my home. There was somebody from the funeral home there. I talked to all these people. They said I talked to them. I was, rational and everything. I called Jim that night. There was one other friend that I called. I have no recollection of doing any of that. Zero. And that's the second biggest blessing, I think, that I've ever had. The biggest blessing was meeting Karolyn and us living almost 46 years together and having a wonderful life. But I don't want a memory of her dying in our home, and I don't have that. And so I thank God that I have that amnesia. And the last thing I remember is us listening to that Celtic Woman show. And one of the songs that I really, really loved it's not an old Celtic folk song. It's one by a guy named Doogie McLean. It's called Caledonia. And I especially like, and Caledonia is an old Latin term for the area that we now call Scotland. And it was when the Roman Empire was expanding and took over that part of the world. And so that part of the world we now call Scotland was referred to as Caledonia. And you can make the switch in your own mind that Caledonia is just a a wonderful, perfect place. That's what the song is about, loving Caledonia and going back there. But you can, for Caledonia in your mind, you can substitute heaven, paradise, whatever term that you want to use for that. But it's just a lovely little folk song, and I kept thinking about it, and I'm going to sing just a little bit, if I can get through this, of the chorus for you on that. I'll play just a little bit of the verses change, melodies from verse to verse, but anyway, it's like this. Let me tell you that I love you, that I think about you all the time. Caledonia, you're calling me, now I'm going home. And change the words just a little bit. Let me tell you that I love you, that I think about you all the time. Caledonia is calling you. Now you're going home. She's gone home. I don't want us to leave on that note. We've committed her body to the elements of the earth. We just did a direct burial. I'll tell you the story about embalming some other time. I don't care too much for embalming. An uncle of mine was a mortician. It's a whole other story. But that's not her there. She's free of all the, as Larry said, she's healed of all the pain, all the organ, the heart, the kidneys, all the things that were failing with her. And so this is a day of rejoicing. Some glad morning when this life is o'er, we'll all fly away. Stand with me and sing this. You don't have words for this, you just know it. Some glad morning when this life is o'er, I'll fly away to our home on God's celestial shore. I'll fly away, I'll fly away, oh glory, I'll fly away when I die. Hallelujah, by and by. Thank you so much for coming. Sorry it went so long, but thank you for your presence, for your prayers, for your friendship. And there is coffee and refreshments across the way. Stay as long as you want to and chat, meet people, ask me other questions, ask Jim other questions. He's known her for longer than I have. And just go with the grace of God. Go feeling blessed in your heart that you have been a part of this extended family, even for this brief moment, and that we are all connected. and that we all strive to live out God's agape love. Amen.